Narcissists don't think. Now, obviously, narcissists are capable of thought. They can follow basic instructions. Some of them are capable of being good students or successful business owners or politicians. But when it comes to critical thought, self-reflection, and planning ahead, narcissists have a great handicap when it comes to really being able to think things through. In this video, I'm going to explain more about what I mean by this, why it is that narcissists have a hard time with this, and how it affects your ability to communicate with them. Welcome to Looking Behind the Mirror, where we explore narcissism and take our lives back as we make sense out of nonsense. As a quick disclaimer, everything I say is based on my opinions and my personal experiences. I'm not a professional, and if you're really struggling, I encourage you to seek professional help. I am providing links below for you. Before I go into some specific examples of what exactly I mean by this and how you can see this for yourself, I want to explain a little bit about why it is that narcissists have such a hard time thinking things through or applying critical thought or self-reflection. When you're thinking things through, when you're really thinking about something, there's usually some curiosity there. You're usually trying to understand something that you don't understand. And in order for a narcissist to do this, they have to admit to themselves that they don't know everything. They have to admit to themselves that there are things out there that they don't understand that are worth understanding. Narcissists have an extremely hard time seeing themselves as somebody who could improve in any way at all, even if it's in the amount of knowledge that they have. There is no room for improvement because they're already perfect. So acquiring more knowledge or understanding things in a deeper way is almost insulting to them. It feels threatening. It feels like, why should I have to think about anything? I've already thought everything through. I already know everything. I already understand everything in the best way I possibly could. And this is just one reason that narcissists have a really hard time thinking things through or really digging into something that they don't understand. And of course, another reason, which I think is an even harder one for them to overcome, is that they're just ruled by their emotions 24/7. They don't have room to really think through the cloud of emotions that rules their life, that interprets reality for them. If they feel angry about something, that's proof to them that whatever that situation or whoever that person is did something terrible that deserves that anger. That anger couldn't possibly have come from anything else, or that anger couldn't possibly just be because they're in a bad mood or they're hungry. No, that anger definitely came from somebody or something that caused it, that deserves that anger. Narcissists are so overwhelmed by their emotions, especially anger, that they are almost completely incapable of stopping and asking themselves, wait, why am I angry? Why am I feeling so upset over this person or this thing that doesn't really warrant this much anger? They're so overwhelmed by their emotions that they're practically incapable of doing that, which makes them incapable of thinking things through. And this is because of how hard it is for them to take accountability for anything. If they had to stop and say, wait, maybe this anger is a little out of balance. Maybe this anger is coming from somewhere else. Now they also have to admit that maybe they've been too hard on somebody. Maybe they've judged something unfairly, and that means having to admit that they've done something that isn't perfect, that they've made some sort of error of judgment. And that is so painful. It probably amplifies their anger and makes them even more angry, especially if you're trying to point out to them that they're being unreasonable. Now they have even more emotions clouding their ability to think things through. So here are a few ways that you can see specifically a narcissist's inability to apply critical thought or self-reflection to situations. The first thing is a lot of narcissists tend to repeat the same mistakes over and over again. They cause their misery or their problems or whatever it is that keeps happening to them in their life, and they go into victim mode. They have such a hard time accepting accountability for anything that emotionally it's much easier for them to just pretend that everything is somebody else's fault and just keep repeating the same problem over and over and over again, making their lives miserable, chaotic, constantly starting over with things all the time, and just spending their life pretending that it's somebody else's fault or that they're just a victim of fate. I know of somebody who employs people, who runs a business, and this person is one of the most narcissistic people I've ever known. And I've seen that over the years, this person is constantly losing really important, talented, key employees because of how this person treats their employees. This business is a revolving door, and people are constantly walking out in tears or walking out screaming swear words. People that are integral parts of how this company runs. So this person is constantly handling emergencies where really important employees are just walking out without any notice. And although this problem that this person has is 100% because of the way they treat their employees, because of what I would consider emotional abuse and manipulation, they will never ever acknowledge that they are the problem, that they are causing this constant problem that they're dealing with, because it's much easier to just constantly blame every single person that walks out the door. If solving a problem requires accountability from a narcissist, that problem is never going to get solved. It's just going to keep cycling and cycling over and over and over again while the narcissist remains stuck in this helpless cycle of victimhood and fate and woe is me and wow, it sure is hard to find good help. Anything to avoid acknowledging the real problem and anything to avoid really thinking about, wait, why does this only happen to me? I don't know of any other business owners that have to deal with this level of turnover. Wow, I must be doing something wrong here. Narcissists have a really hard time thinking things through when it comes to recurring problems, because thinking them through really can only lead to accountability. Another way that you can see a narcissist's inability to think critically is the way that they will carry on with gibberish or nonsensical arguments. And the more that you try to ask them for clarity, the more nonsensical the conversation gets. It's like they spiral into these confusing whirlwinds of whatever they're talking about. And if these didn't start as arguments, they can actually turn into arguments because of how frustrating these types of conversations can be. And there's a lot of different ways that this can happen. Maybe the narcissist says something that just doesn't make any sense, but they're not expecting to be called out for it because they're not thinking things through. They're not thinking like, oh, what I'm about to say doesn't make any sense. Somebody might call me out on it. Somebody might ask me for clarification. No, they're saying whatever they're saying because it makes them look a certain way. It makes them feel a certain way. They're thinking based on their emotions. It's something that made them feel good to say in the moment. But then when they're asked to think about what they just said or to clarify it or to apply any amount of thought, now they have to double down on it and say something else that makes them feel better. They're unable to stop and really think about what they've said and then acknowledge that maybe that didn't make sense, because that's accountability. I mean, it's just this whirlwind of emotions that keeps them trapped in this place where they can't accept accountability, and now they have to just dig themselves deeper and deeper into this hole of nonsense. And this could happen in a situation that hurts you. Like maybe the narcissist spent 2 or 3 hours yelling at you and insulting you and shaming you for losing their favorite pair of shoes. You know, what did you do with my shoes? And just going on and on about how irresponsible you are and just tearing you to pieces. And then maybe they find their shoes somewhere where they realize they're the one that misplaced their shoes, right? They can't come back to you and apologize and acknowledge that they made a mistake. That moment in their head where most people would say, oh, shoot, maybe I should have thought about this a little more before I started digging into this person. Maybe I should have thought about the fact that this is where I put my shoes. Maybe I should apologize so that I don't cause more damage to this relationship for things that are my fault. There's no ability to stop and think in that way. It's just an emotional reaction of, oh no, I made a mistake. No. This has to be the other person's fault somehow. It's just this overwhelming emotion that completely drowns out any rational thought. And this is why when a narcissist does something like this that's completely their fault, when they're clearly in the wrong, instead of apologizing or admitting or acknowledging the truth, they'll double down. They'll get even nastier with you. Maybe they'll bring up something that you did 3 years ago, like, well, but you lost my baseball bat. You lost this or that or the other. Of course, I thought that you lost my shoes because you lose everything, because you never keep track of anything. And if you try to bring up the fact of, hey, you were accusing me of something that I didn't do and you were making me feel bad about something that wasn't my fault, they feel like you're attacking them. And I really want to emphasize the word feel. They feel like you are attacking them. Therefore, in their mind, you are attacking them. That is how they interpret reality, and that is all the thinking that they will ever do. Another way that you can see a narcissist's inability to think things through is in their unrealistic expectations. Narcissists don't plan ahead in realistic ways. Some narcissists will spend all their money and you'll wonder, like, well, how did they expect to be able to pay their bills later? Or some narcissists will double down on really big, grandiose ideas. Maybe they'll invest everything they have into some harebrained idea and you'll wonder, like, how did they think that that was going to work out? Or some narcissists will expect you to do the impossible, or will expect you to help in ways that you're unable to, or do things that you're incapable of doing, and they don't stop and think through, like, oh, maybe it's impossible for this person to spend all of their time with me and spend all of their time cleaning the house, because their emotions are doing the thinking for them. If they feel like something's a really great idea, it's a really great idea. If they feel like they have the right to spend all of their money on something they don't need today, that's all the thinking they need to do. They don't need to think about bills that are due next week. If they feel like you should spend all of your time with them, and they feel like you should do all of the house cleaning all day long, then that's how they feel. They feel like you should be doing all those things, and they don't stop to think about how they're expecting something that's impossible. They live their life with magical thinking because their thinking is done with their emotions. They feel things like, this should work out. I should be able to do this. You should do this thing for me. I feel like you're attacking me. I feel like I'm going to be rich and famous someday. Therefore, these things are all just going to magically happen the way that I feel like they should, because the way I feel is reality. And you can also see this in the unrealistic way that they see themselves and the unrealistic way that they expect to be treated. They feel like everyone is focused on them, like everyone is paying attention to them. They feel like they are the center of the universe. Therefore, everybody's paying attention to them. Everyone is focused on them in a good way or a bad way. They'll also greatly overestimate or underestimate their abilities to do things based on how they feel. So a narcissist might be inclined to give up on something far before they really ought to give up on something, with just a defeatist attitude and painting themselves as the victim and this victim of fate, and, oh, nothing ever works out for me, when they could have tried harder. They had plenty of hope to keep going, but because they had a feeling that it's time to give up, this is never going to work, they stopped thinking about whatever it was they were doing. And the flip side of this is a narcissist that will have completely unrealistic, almost delusional goals, that thinks that they're capable of things that are completely unreasonable. I knew somebody that was an extremely narcissistic person that had this idea for an invention. I don't want to be too specific, but it was an invention that they had an idea for, but they didn't know how to make it work. So they wanted credit for having this idea, and they wanted to be able to sell the idea to a manufacturing company that could make this idea, but they couldn't figure out how to make the idea. And they also wanted to patent it. I could go on and on about this story, but, and they were really angry that you can't patent an idea that you haven't actually come up with yet. As an analogy, it would be kind of like coming up with the idea for a flying carpet, a magic flying carpet, without having figured out how to make a magic flying carpet yet. that's kind of the situation this person was in. And so this person told me that they expected to be able to call the CEO of a manufacturing company and set up a one-on-one in-person meeting. But first, they were going to get this CEO to agree with them in writing that they wouldn't use this secret idea or steal this idea from this narcissistic person that I knew. And I remember trying to tell this person, like, you really think the CEO is going to meet with you when you haven't even really figured out how to make this thing yet? And that did not go over well. This was a very normal, popular person with lots of friends who had a regular job. You would never know that this person had such delusional ideas. But they were thinking with their emotions, with their delusions of grandeur, with how amazing and awesome they were and how they were going to be a billionaire someday that was going to change the world with their flying carpet that they didn't know how to make. And when I tried to introduce critical thought, when I tried to introduce reality, the emotions completely clouded out anything I was trying to say. Emotions of anger towards me for raining on the parade of all these grandiose emotions that this person had that was probably drowning out emotions of worthlessness and shame. The ability to actually apply critical thought to any of this was obliterated. When it comes to narcissists, their emotions tell them what they can and cannot do. Their emotions tell them what they're capable of and what they're not capable of. They are not able to critically think about what their strengths and weaknesses actually are because they can't acknowledge any weaknesses, they can't acknowledge any roadblocks, and they're just basically unable to question what their emotions tell them is real. Another way that you can see a narcissist's inability to think things through is how they never really pause to self-reflect or think about things. And I know maybe some of you have actually seen them do this, where a narcissist in some rare instances will actually stop and pause and maybe even acknowledge what you're saying, or maybe even seem to take accountability for something that you're trying to call them out for. I mean, I have seen this happen, but in my opinion, this is manipulation and it is not genuine. It is done to make you feel like they're actually reflecting on what you're saying. And the reason I think this is because if you follow through, if you stick around, you will see that their behavior does not actually change. And that in the long term, there is no evidence whatsoever that they have actually thought about or internalized anything that you were trying to say to them, or anything that they discovered supposedly when they were engaging in self-reflection. Even when they have moments of clarity, even when they do have moments of critical thought or self-reflection, anything that they learn in those moments is really fleeting, and their emotions are able to crowd any of that stuff out, make them forget about it, or give them ways to do mental gymnastics that can convince themselves of what they really wanted to think, that can help them abandon any products of critical thought. Narcissists don't learn. They especially don't learn from their mistakes, because that would require accountability, and they don't learn from other people because that would require a little bit of humility. They would have to admit that somebody knows something that they don't know in order to be able to learn from somebody else. They have this emotional protective wall up in their head that blocks out any ability to grow, that blocks out any ability to acknowledge that maybe there is more for them to be, maybe there is more for them to learn, because like I said, they already know everything. There's nothing that's worth knowing that they could ever learn about because they are already perfect. They are already the pinnacle of humanity. There is no room for growth. There is no room for learning because they're already at the top of what any person could ever possibly be. To acknowledge that there's any room for improvement to a narcissist means that they are a completely worthless, horrible piece of garbage person. Because narcissists engage in black and white thinking. Narcissists do what is called splitting. Everything, anyone, including themselves, is either 100% flawless and perfect and amazing, or a completely worthless piece of garbage. There is nothing in between. And in order to acknowledge that there's any room for growth or learning, means that they are not a perfect, flawless human being, which means that they are a completely worthless piece of garbage. And this is why narcissists can't stop to think to learn or to grow, because they can't acknowledge that there could possibly be any room for that or any need for it. When you are trying to communicate with somebody like this, you are not dealing with someone who is able to stop and reflect on what they've done to you or how they've hurt you. You are not dealing with somebody that has the emotional maturity to stop and think about what you're saying, because anything you're saying is going to emotionally trigger them in some way, and that emotion takes the place of any thought that they might have. If a narcissist does something that clearly ruins their own life or makes them have to start everything over again, they might feel sorry for themselves for the consequences that they suffer, but they are not going to stop and take real accountability for the way that they have caused their own problems. And effective communication with you would require this, and this is why it is a waste of time and energy to try to engage in effective communication with a narcissist about anything that even subtly, slightly suggests that they are not a perfect, flawless human being. Narcissists are ruled by their emotions. Narcissists think solely with their emotions. They are stuck in an endless cycle, on an endless merry-go-round of emotions that just keeps skipping over the acknowledgement of anything they've done, skipping over accountability, skipping over any opportunities to learn or to grow in this circle that they're spinning in constantly. And you can choose to either get off this merry-go-round that they've got you on, or to stay there on it with them, going in endless circles until the end of time. I hope this helps. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up and comment below any ideas you have for me for future videos. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you like this video and would like to see more like it in the future. Until next time, thanks. Bye.